Hello everyone, my name is Ian, the part-time Dungeon Master, and I'm putting this before the actual video, so please listen for just a moment before we get into today's topic. So, recently a tornado went through Beauregard, Alabama, which is roughly about 50 miles away from where I live. And there were a number of good people who lost their lives and lost everything, or lost loved ones, or family or friends. You know how devastating things can be, but Beauregard was hit pretty hard. And I'm just wanting to take a moment to ask for you to keep them in your, thoughts and prayers, as well as to, if you're able to reach out and see how you can help with the healing process that is going on down there. Alabama itself is, pulling very strongly, but you never know whether it be something large or something small that you can do to help others move on and heal. Thank you. On to today's video.
Hello everyone, welcome back to D20 Sundays. I'm your host as always, Ian, the part-time Dungeon Master. So, today's episode is essentially on the Unearthed Arcana Artificer subclass, the Alchemist. Now, back in the beginning of March, end of February, somewhere around there, this was released. Essentially, I think it was actually released on February 28th at night, and I didn't hear about it until March 1st, and I read through it on March 1st and then posted on Reddit about how I felt like the new Artificer class, or the new Artificer Alchemist subclass, was significantly weaker than the previous ones. And I'm not entirely still with that train of thought. I essentially took both the old and the new, and I rolled up level 10 characters for both, and then essentially put them through the exact same scenarios, and went through best case scenario first time, and then worst case scenario, as to how well each of them essentially performed under the same scenarios. And, well, it was kind of interesting. So, why don't we get on to what the most obvious part is, which is the spells. The new Artificer class has a much more expanded spell list, as well as spells known. They actually get level 0 spells to where they can cast cantrips. They got a slightly larger first level, second level, and third level spell list. It's still very short, but they also now have, where the old version only had up to 4th level, the new version has up to 5th level spells. And I still feel like the spell list is kind of constrained, but that is what it is. So, the new version feels like a weaker caster than before. Okay, so the old version, it felt like kind of like, oh yeah, you're a weak caster, but in the sense that you could put out damage if needed, but mostly your abilities were support based. So, yeah, it's kind of a weird thing. Both are support classes. They're meant to be support classes. I'm going to say that right now. They're supposed to be in the back, casting spells, or throwing abilities, or buffing or debuffing, or healing in some form or fashion, in order to keep the party up and alive. That's what the Alchemist subclass is. It is a support class. It's not a frontline fighter. It's not a mid-range fighter. It is a back of the party, heal or debuff or buff. That's all it does. With the old version, you immediately got Alchemist Fire, Alchemist Acid, and one other of your choice. Personally, I liked the Tanglefoot Bag, and then at 3rd level, you can take the Healing Drought. Or you can take the Healing Drought, and then at level 3, take the Tanglefoot Bag. Why? Well, why not? The Healing Drought is really good, but there is a small little caveat to it, and that is a creature can only benefit from it once per long rest. That means you can only take it once per day, essentially. You, on the other hand, can produce it as many times as needed, but a creature can only benefit from it once per day. With that being said, it's still something that levels up with you. If I think of level 3, it's 2d8. Yeah, 3rd level, it's 2d8. So it's essentially like a 2nd level Cure Wounds. And then, as an alchemist, you already get, Cure Wound spells, so that's good as well. On to another small problem, though. The old version, the spell list was a lot more constrained. So the new version definitely has my favor in the fact that it has a much wider spell list, as well as it has more access to spells, and it's got more spell slots. It's got level 0s, level 1s, all the way up to level 5, and all that jazz. So that that goes to the new version. I like that. I don't like the fact that we lost the Alchemist satchels, or the alchemical formulas, because the alchemical formulas were essentially, in my mind, quick level 1, access to being support. You got some damage with the Alchemist Fire and Alchemist Acid, and then you got to choose, one of the others to go with, and then level 3 you got a fourth one. And then it goes up until I think level 9, and you get to choose another one. So, with that in mind, you had to be a lot more careful as to what you chose and how you played your character. And then came another thing that I kind of liked, but at the same time it kind of made me concerned, and that's the infusions. You see, with the old version, you got something known as a Wondrous Invention. You got it at 2nd, 5th, 10th, 15th, and 2nd, 5th, 10th, 15th, and 20th level. You essentially make a wondrous magic item. Level 2, Bag of Holding. Straight off the bat, level 2, Bag of Holding. Boom. The party now doesn't really have to worry about carry capacity that much. I mean, they still do, but not as much. So, that being said, I kind of like the infusions, but there's a problem that comes with them. And the reason why I say that the infusions replace the Wondrous Inventions is because in the Wondrous Inventions, when you die or you stop being an alchemist or whatever, you can give those to the party and they won't go away. As in, the Bag of Holding doesn't stop being a Bag of Holding just because your character died. Meanwhile, with the infusions, that is the case. See, at 10th level, 5 infusions, and you can have only a maximum of 3 activated at a time. So it's like, okay, you're being, kind of a bit of a buffer of the party. Like, you give the fighter that +1 armor, and, you're like, yeah, I'm going to buff up his armor a little bit before, we go on with today's adventure. Because you only can do it, like, after you do a long rest. And then you go to the Barbarian, like, I'm going to make his weapon a +1, so that way, he hits a bit harder. And then, the third one, you just want to, say you want to replicate a bag of holding, because one of the abilities is replicate a magical item. If you die, or if you cast a new infusion, the oldest one goes away. And that's my problem. That's something that kind of makes me go, In the sense that I like it, I like it in the sense that it makes you consider and think more about your actions and how you're going to essentially deal with something. But on the other hand, I don't like the idea that it's like, oh hey, we've been, like, using these buffs that, go up with level, mind you. The +1 becomes eventually +2. And, we've been using these, for a while. And, I'm going to switch out my, everything, I guess. If I cast a new one, it doesn't get rid of the third one that I cast. It gets rid of the first one I cast. Excuse me. And that's the thing. It's like, if at first thing I cast was the +1 weapon, and then, say after a day or two, it's like, hey, I'm going to try something new. If I cast something new, it gets rid of that +1 weapon. So, if you're kind of like, hey, I'm buffing up over here, but if I had already buffed up over here, or if I need to buff up over here now, over here is going to get weaker, and it's kind of like, you never really find a good balance without making yourself be less effective in another way. That's how I feel about the infusions. Because you have to, like, choose them very carefully as you use them, and then make sure you're not essentially weakening another part of the group to buff up another by essentially changing out your infusions. Like I said, that's my opinion. That's how I feel about the infusions. I like the idea of them. I like how they look and how they work. It's just that concept of I have to be careful of how I use my infusions and not to die, because if I die, the infusions go away. As in, that bag of holding just turns into a normal bag and everything bursts out of it. As in, that +1 weapon just is now a weapon. Or that +1 armor or shield is now just a normal armor or shield. And that's what you got to think about when it comes to the infusions, is that if your character dies, well, then the infusions stop working. So it's like, well, fun. I got some notes over here. I already talked about the support abilities, the spells that replace them, but at the same time, okay, like, Alchemist Fire is replaced by Firebolt, and like, okay, I just traded a D6, leveling D6, AoE for a leveling D10 single target. I kind of like the AoE. That's me, though. Alchemist Acid is replaced by Acid Splash. Healing Drought's replaced by Cure Wounds, in a sense. You can spare the dying, so that's great. It's kind of like a preference thing on that, really. But most of all, since I ran both characters, both at level 10, both through the same scenarios, one with best case, one with worst case, there was one very large thing that I noticed. You see, the new Alchemist gets a pet just like the old one. So the old one got a mechanical servant. And while that's great and all, mechanical servant, so like a CR2 large beast, they get a homunculus. Now, the homunculus is great, don't get me wrong. It's definitely got its abilities that make it worth it. Here at the bottom of this page. So, it's armor class 13. I'm not seeing where you can up its armor class, so that's kind of interesting. But, armor class 13, hit points equal to 5 times your level in this class, plus your intelligence modifier. So, it's going to be, like, say if your intellect's 5, so that's 25 plus 10, that's, no, I'm sorry, it's 5 times your level, so 50, plus your intelligence level modifier, so it's 55 HP at level 10. So, kind of squishy. Strength, -3. Dex, +2. Constitution, 0. Intellect, 0. Wisdom, 0. Charisma, -2. Damage immunities, acid and poison, so that's good. Cannot be charmed, exhausted, poisoned. Has dark vision of 60 feet. Understands the languages that you speak. The following numbers increase by 1 when your proficiency bonus increases by 1. Homunculus' skill bonuses and the bonus to hit and damage of its acid spittle, which it can do, which essentially it's 1d6 plus 2 acid damage. It can do 3 times per day an alchemical salve, which it produces one of the following salves and touches one creature that you designate, and the target receives one of the following magic benefits of his choice. First one being buoyancy, gains the flying speed of 10 feet for 10 minutes. Inspiration and resilience. Target gains the number of temporary hit points equals to 2d6 plus your intelligence modifier. I'm losing my voice, I'm sorry. So that's great. That's actually a pretty good support in that sense, but there's a small problem with that. Let's look at the mechanical servant. Here it is. It's a CR2 or less large beast. It has construct instead of beast. It cannot be charmed. It's immune to poison damage and the poisoned condition. Gains dark vision. Understands just the language you speak, but it cannot speak. If you are a target of a melee attacker and the servant within 5 feet of the attacker, you can use your reaction to command the servant to respond using its reaction to make a melee attack against the attacker. So essentially kind of like a revenge strike if needed. So one of the scenarios that I run the level 10 Alchemist through was solo survivability. Now I know it's a very rare thing in some campaigns that a player is going to be alone, in the sense that they have to take on a battle on their own. While the Homunculus definitely adds a good bit of bonus health if possible, as well as, say, what would be a good way of putting it? It has some definitely beneficial abilities. However, when it came down to the solo survivability, with both the idea of the enemy attacking the mechanical servant or the homunculus first, the homunculus died first. I went with the mechanical beast, giant spider. Just, why not? It died, but not as quickly, and I did that for both best and worst case scenarios. And so the mechanical servant definitely had an edge over the homunculus in the sense that it can take damage and survive just a little bit longer. Sure, replacing it's a little bit more expensive than with the homunculus, but that's another story. When it came to just solo on their own, dealing with one or two targets, both classes kind of faltered. But however, the 10th level new Artificer, there was a very distinct problem. He had no way of actually holding things down. And what I mean by that is that if you look at the 10th level, he gets up to 3rd level spells too. Well, yeah, he gets fly. About it. Their spell list is kind of constrained, so the spells definitely helped with survivability, but the problem is that when it came down to it, because the 10th level old Artificer had much more tricks up his sleeve in the sense of the alchemical formulas, and the alchemical formulas are not limited to spell slots or once per day or anything like that. They're just pretty much he can pluck it out and throw it. The old Artificer Alchemist class was able to out-survive the new one, in the sense he could be like constantly chucking Tanglefoot bags. Yeah, Tanglefoot bags, those are fun. They just, tangle things up. And, here's the great thing. The area becomes a difficult terrain for 1 minute as well. So, that automatically makes it to where he can start running. And then he can toss a Tanglefoot bag and start running. And then he can also take out a the Swift Drought. What's it called again? Swift Step Drought, which he essentially increases his movement speed by 20 feet for 1 minute. And he could just use that as a bonus action, mind you, and GTFO. So, there's that age-old running away technique, definitely useful. If the Artificer is able to get his fly spell off and able to maintain concentration, he can get away pretty easily too. But there's that whole maintain concentration thing, because, fly is a concentration spell. Yeah. But also at the same time, the old Artificer with the Tanglefoot bag, combined with the Alchemist Fire, the Alchemist Acid, and being able to essentially use them unlimitedly, solo survivability was a little bit easier for that version than the new version. And, I don't know, maybe my math could have been wrong, and the new version is completely better. This whole video has basically been my opinion, and, yeah. I thank you for watching. I hope this was somewhat entertaining. Definitely check out the new Artificer. I'm working on trying to figure out a way of essentially meshing the two together, especially taking the spell list from the new version and adding it to the old version, because it needs that updated spell list, as well as working with the spell slots, because when it comes to the old version, you just get spell slots and no infusions. And you get a lot of limited spell slots. Versus the new version, it's like, infusions and cantrips and spell slots. So I'm probably just going to work with my Dungeon Master and move just the spell slots over, and that's it, and leave the infusions out, because I feel like adding them to a current character that's already in the make or already being run would alter the dynamic of the character itself. Anyways, I'll catch you guys next D20 Sundays.